Today's webinar is moderated by Dr. Horst Heitz, Executive Director of SME Europe of the EPP. And that was it from my side. And with this, I will pass over. So please, Mr. Heitz, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Steffi, for the nice technical introduction. And now it's my pleasure to moderate this important topic, but it's already arrived now, not only in the future. And we have the pleasure to have Eva Meidel, member of the European Parliament, a member of the ITRE committee, and also EPP group coordinator in the AIDA committee and vice president of SME Europe, to have her as host today. Thank you very much. I will introduce the speakers during the program. We have 90 minutes. We have very interesting experts here. I want only to say thank you also to Mr. Jürgen Barbon, our Vice President of SME Europe, member also of the European Parliament and of the INTA and AIDA committee. Thank you, you are here. And also special of our Senator of SME Europe, Dr. Michael Boni. Thank you that you are here. And now I want not to stop this interesting debate and give the floor to Eva Meidel for the welcome and opening. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Horst. Good morning, everyone. Dear colleagues, guests, distinguished speakers. It's a real pleasure to welcome you, to kind of listen to each other, to exchange ideas, to share reflections, but also I think to share recommendations about how artificial intelligence can become a competitive edge for SMEs. This is something that me and Jürgen have been discussing and talking ever since we first met. But the topic on artificial intelligence and the technological advancements has been, so to say, a passionate for me and Michał Boni for a really long time. So in a way, we are like-minded participants, I believe, today here, but perhaps we have different approaches. And most importantly, we need to, see the ways to make it more, not just easy, but also more accessible for SMEs to deploy technologies and make them more successful and more prepared. So I would like to thank and congratulate SME Europe for putting this event together, for your tireless work, Horst, to you and the whole team, and for helping us basically channel the voice of SME into EU policy making processes. I have to say that I briefly mentioned what we've done with Michał and with Jürgen, but I think over the past 4 years, we have been discussing basically how we should regulate AI. And it's good that we now have a proposal on the table, a proposal to work, and most importantly, to make it workable in a way that would deliver certainty for startups and SMEs. I think that the truth, after all, is that, however, Europe's AI developers did not sit and wait while we sort this sort of regulation. Instead, European developers rolled their sleeves, so to say, and continue pursuing their visions, one could even call their dreams, to develop cutting-edge AI technology. And what I mean is a couple of examples here. In Germany, we have now a better translation service being offered, thanks to the startup called DeepL. In France, we have Oken, which helps us to leverage reality for medical and also biology research. In Finland, we have this wearable smart ring to track our health and sleep better, and it's called Aura. So these are just a few examples of potential European AI companies that already in a way could be holding the key through transforming European economy and society. So that's why I think our job is to empower them and to nurture this ecosystem of excellence. And one of the guiding principles in my work has always been that regulation is there not to stifle innovation, but being able to sense the pulse of SMEs through such discussions such as today's, I think is instrumental, and it helps us deliver this regulation that I've mentioned. I also think that as policymakers, for us, it's important to create a regulatory framework that is easy to navigate. Of course, I welcome the proposed AI regulation because it's necessary, it's timely, but I would also not shy away from pointing out perhaps few areas where we could, improve, where we need to be very careful how we craft the legislation in order to make it easier for SMEs to navigate. So first of all, I'm very happy to see, and I'll focus on two things. Very happy to see provisions in this legislation when it comes to data governance and cybersecurity, because I think that AI systems can only be strong if the data is of quality and if the systems are safe and protected. This is also when, after all, citizens would feel secure and trusted to use more technological advancements in the economy and society as a whole. One of the main obstacles for SMEs to develop and deploy AI solutions has been the lack of access to data. And I think to a very big extent, this is addressed by the Commission, and this obstacle is addressed via the data strategy in order for us to make sure that data is usable and is flowing. Data is always, I use now data in terms of percentages. Now, if you look at the amount of data that is not being used, it's about 95% of the data that's collected in Europe isn't used even once, according to Oxford Internet Institute. And this is the sort of dark statistic that has to make us want to change this information for the good of our SMEs and our economy and society overall. And the second element I want to briefly mention in the proposal is the possibility to create national regulatory sandboxes to help AI development and to empower those developments test their ideas. So always in the past, when I will be talking with various type of startups or companies that have ideas, but they don't want to take the risk, they always thought that's what's the best thing we could provide for them. And in addition to regulatory sandboxes, there's a call for separate channels for communication and guidance for SMEs. So of course, I'll be also interested to hear on that end what you think. And also a possibility to reduce fees for conformity. So this is indeed, I think, a step in the right direction to enable that innovation that I've been kind of saying we need to trigger through this regulation. And finally, just a couple of open questions to our distinguished panelists and participants today. I think it's disrespectful of how we read the regulation. There's still some open questions, and so for me, I would be curious to hear: is the definition of AI future-proof? How will the risk be assessed by the AI developers? How feasible and at what cost comes the transparency obligation in the ex-ante assessment? Then when we, make regulations for the first time globally, like we did with the GDPR, is this regulation going to create some legal headaches for SMEs, as the GDPR did? And perhaps lastly, an underlying question is how Europe AI talent will be leveraged to achieve an ecosystem of excellence, but also of trust. So these are some of the questions that I have in mind, and maybe the panelists want to address some of those or some other ones. Maybe there's many other more concrete ones coming from the audience. But I hope that will serve as food for thought for today's conversation. And I very much look forward hearing your ideas and your views. So thank you very much for accepting the invite and being with us. And now, Horst, over to you for the most difficult part and the most interesting part, the debate discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva, for this, I think, excellent introduction. You gave us not only an overview, you gave us also a package of questions. And I think what is the difference to many others, I think at SME Europe with members like you is this positive approach to say how to make us better is the first idea we have, not how to regulate them down, that we can survive. And the second thing, what I like also very much, the practical approach. I think we have always to think about this legislation has also to come to live. It's not only the target, it has also to work. And I think this is the right approach, and also not to forget in the end, but not first, security, trust into this new technology is important. But for SMEs, this business is always based on trust. I think this is something what is in the nature of SMEs. But I think we will have an interesting debate, and we had now, I think now we're coming to Mr. Lundborg, Martin Lundborg, Head of Accompanying Research for Mittelstandigital. This is founded by the Federal Ministry for Economy Affairs and Energy of Germany. And you had a very interesting study. This is why we found each other. And please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, perfect. Yeah, good morning from my side. I'm very pleased to take part in these discussions. And I'm very grateful to present our ideas and experience from working directly with small and medium-sized enterprises in Germany. I'm coordinating Mittelstandigital, which consists of 26 innovation hubs or competence centers with over 1,100 experts from academia and transfer partners like chambers of commerce or industry organizations, etc. So we have the networks and the experts. And pre-COVID, we had contact with about 100,000 SMEs throughout of Germany. So it's a pretty large initiative. And we have, so I think we can derive a lot of expertise from our daily work. For us, it's important also we provide information. It's more or less information, workshops, trainings, and labs what we provide. We do this free of charge and neutral, so the SMEs can trust our information is not based on information from the large corporations. And also on site, it's very important for SMEs because SMEs don't want to be far away. They don't drive 3 hours to get some information about digitization or artificial intelligence. So it's important that we have over 130 sites in Germany, where we are active and where SMEs can also book a meeting with our experts. For us, artificial intelligence or AI is one of the greatest new innovations, bring us a new era of the information society. And the special thing about this is it's a new kind of, it's a new way to invent and implement software, which means it's based on data. So I'm really grateful that Mrs. Meidel, Eva spoke about how important data is, because this is a new way to provide applications based on data instead of having software developers coding the applications upfront. This means that this software is cheaper to implement, and therefore we can use it in many more different environments and for different use cases which were not profitable before. I have some slides, and the question is, what does AI mean for small and medium-sized enterprises? AI is nothing new. It was invented in the 50s, 1950s, and the first 30, 40 years, it was something for academics or for Hollywood blockbuster movies. So for the most SMEs, they have had for about 10 years ago, I would say, this picture of AI. It's a robot, a killing robot or something from an AI movie from Hollywood, which is absolutely not true. If you look at Germany now, I think this is more or less a good representative of what AI is for the German SMEs. According to the DESI index of the European Commission, only 15% of German enterprises use big data in their companies. And according to a survey of the IT industry organization Bitkom, only 8% of the enterprises state that they use AI as of today. And even worse, 60% state that artificial intelligence is not even relevant for their business. But positive to see is that this figure is going down. More and more enterprises are realizing that AI is is an important issue in the future. So I think we have to continue with the work we're already doing. And why do I have R2D2 from Star Wars as a symbol for AI in the German Mittelstand? Well, first, R2D2 is only making beeps, he don't talk, and hardly anyone understands what he says. For AI, this means that the SMEs is very transparent what AI is and what it means and what you can do with it. And AI as such, especially when we talk about neural networks, it's not very transparent how the computer works. And therefore, I think it's very important in Europe that we improve the digital skills of the workforce. I'm very happy that Maida introduced with this topic because we need more experts, and especially for the German Mittelstand or for the SMEs across Europe, because large corporations can pay higher salaries and win more experts. So especially the small and medium-sized enterprises who suffers from a lack of digital skills in the workforce. I really need to improve this. Second, R2D2, this robot here is not transparent, and it's the same for neural networks. It makes it difficult for SMEs to understand what AI really is. And therefore, we are very happy with our initiative, Mittelstandigital, to inform the SMEs about what AI is, how it works, and what you can do with it. And thirdly, this robot, the R2D2, is packed with data, and it's also what Maida said. Data is the most important thing to develop AI applications. And according to our work and our exchange with SMEs, many SMEs don't know that they have the data. And if they don't know that they have the data, they don't know how to use it, and they don't know how to prepare it and make it usable for AI applications. So one very important job for us is to show and support SMEs identifying data, prepare data, and use data for AI applications. Another huge problem for SMEs is to see which applications are really profitable. So this is also something we are focusing in our work, and we do it with different best practices or use cases where the competence centers implement real projects with the SMEs. This is one from Thuringia in Germany, where they have used AI to predict the utilization of different machines. And when the machines are idle, the employees get a notification also that they can take out overtime and go for a walk or something. And this is how we show that AI is useful for SMEs. It saves money, it creates new business opportunities, and this is a very important part of our work. So this is, Han Heitz started to say that we have done a study. We have discussed with our experts and made a study together with our experts what SMEs really need. And I think what you can say is that the greatest opportunities for AI is, according to our experts, optimization of distribution and logistics, increased process efficiency, sales and targeted advertising, for instance, promotion and improved customer service, or reduction in personnel costs and higher efficiency. So there is a huge potential from AI. And here also an important thing for SMEs. SMEs normally don't have the resources to implement huge projects, and these would also be too risky for an SME to implement large projects. So for our work, it's very important to have small projects where we can prove to the SMEs that an AI application is profitable. So in small steps, and when they have taken the first steps, these enterprises are realizing the huge benefit of AI, and then we continue on the path to be a completely digital company of the future. There are a lot of challenges, and one is the lack of know-how and skilled workers, what our experts said, and also data security and lack of data are other two issues which are very important obstacles to overcome. There is also an issue of limited financial resources. I think this is an issue which is more important as a way to reduce the hurdles and motivate for the first steps. So how do we promote? Yeah, of course, you need infrastructure as well, data, I said, and use cases. So what we need is what we're doing in our competence centers is about informing and create awareness for the huge potentials and possibilities of AI and how to take the first steps. So we're doing checklists, etc. also, and instructions, help with information. And we also do trainings. We do workshops, for instance, for creating and developing new business models, where the SMEs can come into the competence centers. We provide best practice use cases to show what works. Very important is also networking. It's one of the strengths of the German economy, the strong business networks we have. And this is something we promote with our events and matchmaking platforms, etc. Yeah, so that's more or less the core of our what we do to provide AI. And the last few last words, we have now implemented AI trainers. These were decided by the German government with the AI strategy. We now have over 70 experts which work as AI trainers, developed over 17 competence centers. And these are regionally close to the SMEs because it's very important to be present in the regions. And the demand for these AI trainers is huge. We have no problems to reach SMEs. It's more a lack of resource and time. So I really think it's our experience that AI is coming. It's present in the heads of the SMEs. They know that AI exists, but many SMEs need more information. They need help, support to identify relevant data. They need access to data. open data policies is probably a very good idea. Data spaces could be one thing we should promote, like GaiaX, for instance. So I think it's very important to support the SMEs, and I also think it's very profitable and will help Europe to create a new digital future. So Heitz, you're on mute.
No, thank you very much for the presentation. I think the numbers are really impressive. 100,000 SMEs. How many SMEs you can reach per year with your capacities, in fact? How long would need to contact every SMEs in, theoretically?
Yeah, Germany has, according to the German definition, 3.5 million SMEs, and according to the EU definition, 2.5 million SMEs. We have a huge work in front of us, and I think it's easier to reach the SMEs which are already represented in networks, who are already existing and working with other SMEs and with industry organizations. So it's the longer we are going, the more difficult it will be for us to reach new SMEs. That's something we work on.
And then is the awareness creating for the SMEs who are not thinking artificial intelligence is relevant for them. I think then the challenge for the future. I think this is very interesting. Thank you very much. And we coming to the first speaker in the debate. So first a statement. Martin Ulbricht, Senior Expert at the Artificial Intelligence Policy Development and Coordination Unit, DG Connect, European Commission. Yes, the European Commission is very active. In April, they had this press release about Europe fit for the digital age. You're doing a lot for trust and also to make Europe fit for the future. What we SMEs can expect from the Commission and from the European Union to help them to get this new challenge done and also to have a benefit out of this. Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Heinz. Thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to participate in this debate. First of all, it is true, the European Commission has been very active, but not just in the last month. We have started our AI policy for the last 3 years. And I think it's very important to underline that from the beginning, we've had an AI policy which is focused on 2 things. On the one hand, on the promotion of investment, on the support of AI. We are very much in favor of AI. It is not something we are afraid of. And on the other hand, also on the regulatory aspects. We've had the high-level group on the ethics, and now that has become the proposal for legislative initiative. And everybody talks obviously about this regulation, which is understandable because it is affecting everybody, and as regulation is also very much a public policy instrument. However, this is only part of our approach. From the beginning, we've done everything, and this time as well, we have on the same day published the regulation, but also what we call the coordinated plan on AI. It's a very bureaucratic title, I have to admit that, but it's a strategy document of something like 60 pages in which we list a number of actions in which we with which we try to promote investment of AI and development in AI and deployment in AI in Europe. And it is clearly an important, but in this approach, the regulation is also important because it's not, obviously the regulation has one important effect, which is trying to protect citizens from possible abuses of their fundamental rights and safety, but also it's a question of creating trust, as you rightly pointed out. According to some surveys, we've seen something like 70% of companies think that lack of trust by consumers is one of the major obstacles to development of AI, just behind basically skills. I mean, skills availability, I think, is the biggest, and then the second biggest already is the lack of trust, and that is something we're trying to address. However, in doing so, we are also very mindful of the cost that can have. And therefore, my personal interpretation is, or my personal message is, for most companies, the single most important element of the proposal is Annex 3. In Annex 3, you have a list of applications which are concerned by the proposal. It's 2 pages long, about half of that is from security. If what you're developing is not on that page, forget about the regulation. In the requirements, everything is only applicable to this very small set of applications. So most in the impact assessment, we estimate somewhere between 5 and 15%, but that's a very conservative estimate. I think in reality, somewhere between 1 and 5% of all AI applications may be covered by the requirements. Somewhere between 85 and 95% of applications are not covered by the regulations. So all you have to do for most SMEs, go there, check whether you're covered, and if not, then that's it. The minimal additional requirements in terms of transparency when you use deepfakes, emotional recognition, or one other thing. Oh yeah, or when you have something like a chatbot, which can be interpreted as a human, then you just have to put a label somewhere with literally 3 words. This is AI or whatever. But the real obligations of the regulation only apply to these things. So I would everybody, before you start panicking and before you start thinking what this might have to whether you want to start investing in other countries rather than Europe because this is so negative, I would really encourage everybody to go to the list and see whether you actually are concerned. Most people are not concerned. So that's the first thing. The second thing, of course, is that many of the requirements, even for those very few applications where there are actually some obligations, many of the requirements correspond to what companies are doing anyway. We have requirements such as robustness and accuracy. Obviously, if you're developing an AI system which isn't accurate, nobody's going to buy it, and if it breaks down after 2 weeks because it isn't robust, that's not going to be working either. And in order to do that, you need high quality data, which is another one of the requirements. So don't be afraid or don't be discouraged by the existence of this application, of this regulation. It's important to have these requirements because there's always a few black sheep in the market, which is very bad, A, for those consumers which would be affected in their fundamental rights and in their safety by these few black sheep applications, and B, of course, and they're coming back to the original argumentation, it's also very bad for the trust. Most of the AI applications, they're perfectly respectful of fundamental rights, but people are still concerned. They're afraid, and if you have even only a few in the market which are legally doing something which then turns out to be very negative for the fundamental rights of humans, then that is really bad, very bad for your business climate. So I think it's, in addition to all the things that we're doing in the coordinated plan, the regulation is also an approach which actually helps companies. At least this is certainly our reading and our intention. And then the third part in there is, you all know that the question of AI and how it should be regulated is something which has developed all over the world, not just in Europe, but also in third countries. But in Europe also, it has developed in a number of different member states. And the advantage of having a European regulation, and that's something which is much more important for SMEs than for large companies, is that you have a single framework across Europe. If you're a large company and the Germans have one regulation and the Italians have another one and the French have another one and Dutch have another one, you give it to your existing legal team where you have 5 or 10 lawyers and they will deal with it. It's okay. It's harassment, but it's not a big problem. If you're an SME, of course, that's going to be much more complicated. So the fact that that we have a single European framework, I think, is of additional advantage to the SMEs. And I'm trying to be very brief. So my last comment doesn't really, I just would like to comment on the idea in the previous one that R2D2 is really what AI is. Among all the AI characters in the Hollywood movies, and that's it's really something where most people get the idea of AI from. Let's face it, and that's also one of the reasons why this topic has been so important. My personal character of AI is really is Spock, who's of course not actually artificial intelligence, but it is much more representative of what AI actually is than, for example, C-3PO or the others, because Spock has no emotions, it's perfectly logical, and has no humor. And these 3 things are much more characteristic of AI than all the AI characters that you actually see in the movies, and very often develop conscience and feelings and sometimes even humor. And Spock is to a certain extent it's really a very good image of AI. It's highly efficient, extremely logical, and highly efficient because very logical, yet very, very limited in what he can do and not. And that exactly is what AI is for us. And that's also why this regulation is so useful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this clear statement. I have to say this is to say a very important for SMEs to have a legal framework who is creating is trust, who is smart and clear, easy to understand, and then also harmonizing this in the different member states of the European Union. And I think this positive approach, like you say, you should not be afraid of what artificial intelligence, but you can also do everything that you can trust in it. I think this is a very good approach because it brings this, because it's not only SMEs and business are living in the society, and the society must support these developments. I think this is the right approach. And now we're coming to Dr. Michael Boni, who is was the first Minister of Digital Affairs in Central Eastern Europe, 2011-2013, was member of the European Parliament, and is still very active in this topic. You were before also as a member of the Parliament, one of the experts of the EPP in these topics. What is your approach? Where you are seeing the trends, where SMEs find their place? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Horst, and thank you very much, Eva, for excellent introduction to our discussion, and Martin for presenting what kind of issues we should take into account when we are discussing about artificial intelligence and the SMEs development. Two general points. Firstly, how to discuss and work on artificial intelligence regulation, keeping the proper, needed, necessary balance between the innovation and regulation. Eva raised this problem, how we need to work on regulation which will be future-proof. And also we need to consider if the definition of artificial intelligence presented in the regulation is future-proof, and there are some concerns and question marks, but we need to check it. The second, how to think not only about rules, principles, they are obviously crucial for the trustworthy, human-centric artificial intelligence, but also focus on the most adequate implementation, tools, ways, creating the friendly using of artificial intelligence systems and establishing the oversight. So having said that, I want to try to look at SMEs with regard to the artificial intelligence development in two perspectives. SMEs as creators of artificial intelligence-based solutions in the broad sense of artificial intelligence understanding, and SMEs as users of artificial intelligence systems for various purposes in different industrial areas. SMEs as creators. We need to remember, it was raised by Martin Ulbrich, that currently just about 85% of artificial intelligence-based products, services, applications are free from the big risks, so that they don't have to be evaluated according to the risk pyramid requirements. But what if some special SMEs, startups would be involved in creation artificial intelligence solutions as authors, and they would relate to the low level of risks, the limit level of risks? I think it's no problem, but even to the high level of risks, do they have capacity to fulfill all requirements related to the levels and prepare all analysis, ex-ante assessments, and be ready to send the package of transparent information for taking the conformity assessment and start at the market? There is a possibility to reduce fee for SMEs for confirmation assessment. It's described in the regulation. And what if all those requirements can become too expensive, slow up the commercialization of prototypes by waiting for example, human rights impact assessment, which is very often will be crucial. How to ensure at the member states level the participation of SMEs and priority access to the EI regulatory sandboxes, key for innovative activities. Eva asked about it. I think this is a very important way to start with innovation and be a little open for strong requirements. And how to ensure also for SMEs the full access to the public data and high quality private business data to encourage small, medium businesses to be active at the artificial intelligence area. And of course, how those SMEs could have access to special funds supporting their innovative ideas. Concluding, we need to find answers to involve SMEs to this big development of artificial intelligence. But looking at the SMEs as users of AI, we need to take into account three things crucial for dissemination of artificial intelligence using by SMEs and supporting the competitive advantages, development, and more effective business activity and efficient management. Firstly, this is aware of the significant opportunities done by artificial intelligence. Secondly, the accessibility of data and some kind of knowledge in the small, medium businesses, what kind of data they have. And thirdly, the accessibility of artificial intelligence solutions addressed to SMEs. In the European Enterprise Survey on the use of technologies based on artificial intelligence done before COVID acceleration, digital acceleration, there were some interesting information about AI adoption by enterprises, and Martin Lundberg presented some of them using at least one simple, it depends on definition, artificial intelligence technology. It's only 40% of companies using at least two simple artificial intelligence technologies, 25, but not using AI at all and not planning to use artificial intelligence solutions, 40%. So it should be changed. And of course, there are important barriers to artificial intelligence adoption. Hiring new staff with the right skills, it's a problem for 57% of the businesses. The cost of adaptation, 52% of businesses. Cost of operational processes, 49. Lack of skills among existing staff, 45, and lack of public or external funding, 36%. But if we want to make AI-based solutions the special added value also to SMEs, we have to find the proper responses to the presented challenges. Conclusions. The real challenge is to discuss about the proper regulatory framework, not stopping innovation, to find the best implementary tools, accessibility of artificial intelligence, and accessibility of data and understanding the significance of data, and support SMEs in their way to achieve all possible advantages coming from artificial intelligence. So awareness, and the regulation, on the other hand, would create the certainty in the area of legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bohne. Michael, I think this is really the what you say, awareness. If 30% of SMEs are not planning to implement artificial intelligence is a high number. But I think what you mentioned here, this is also very interesting. Of course, implementation can have the best regulation. The member states has to implement it in the best way. But also very interesting for me is the risk management. If SMEs can provide this. Also the discussion about open data. I think not only to use your own data, to use from the government, from the communities, and of course always we coming back to finance. I think this depends in which region also in Europe you are based. Perhaps some regions has less problems, some have more problems with finance. But we're coming now to our next speaker, François Sorlier, AI expert and head of the PAC EI program of the region Île-de-France, dedicated to SMEs. a very practical approach also. And yeah, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you to the previous speakers. I'm going to basically talk about a very practical, stupid project, very simple. This project is being funded by the Paris region, and it's a 3-year program. We started, unfortunately, right before COVID. This was absolutely not the right time for doing so. So our first year has been more than a year. We have to extend it. But basically, this program is part of the more general program that the region has, which is called Plan AI, to launch lots of different initiatives in the direction of companies to improve the development and deployment of AI. This particular program, PAC AI, is the first measure of this plan, and it's targeting SMEs, and I'm using SMEs with what Michal just told us, the users or the consumers, right? That is not the companies who are producing AI, the startups, but the SMEs who should be using it and actually are not. And the reason why they are not, and this is what we are trying to address in this program, is a lack of understanding. So basically, I'm talking here on the first step in any project that you might have when you want to develop activity with SMEs. Martin before discussed about a very general program, all the different things you can do for SMEs. I'm talking of the first step, the first thing that will decide for an SME to go or not go. What it means is if ever you fail this first step, then it's over for them. They will not go back to AI. So the question we have here is basically to contact them, get in touch with them. And this is not easy at the beginning because they don't know what AI is, they don't understand what it is, they're afraid of it sometimes, and they have absolutely no contact whatsoever with the usual network of companies or of friends who have already done it. So the problem really is, how do you meet this, right? Sometimes I'm thinking of this as a dating problem. How do you meet your first girl, right? When you're a student in a boys school, let's say. So the issue we have when we finally meet them is that they don't understand anything about AI, of course. They completely lack the expertise to do it. They do not understand at all the cost of a project. They are basically harassed by many companies who want to dump on them very, very fanciful programs. They don't know how to launch a program and how it's going to run. And they don't even know what should be the best use case for them. So it's basically tabula rasa. You go to these SMEs and they don't know. So I've been speaking to many, many of them, not hundreds of thousands, Martin, but probably less than 100. And basically, it always goes like, when I talk with them, I never, ever talk about AI. I never, ever mention even the word or what it is or is not. That's not the question. I talk business. What is your business? What is it you're doing? What is it which you're doing and could do better? What is it which you're doing and costs a lot to you? So you have to talk with them and basically figuring out when they talk how you could solve that precise pain point, as it's usually called, with AI. But you don't need to explain that to them because then you lose them, right? So with the many companies, SMEs that I've talked to, so far, I never met one, or I met one once, who cannot use AI. I'm talking here of SMEs who have already done some digital evolution. Usually I think of this as the cake is the digitalization. This company understand that, what data is, they have processes, a little bit automatic, they're not doing everything by hand, but the cherry on the cake, that's AI. The cherry on the cake is what they are going to be able to use to profit from this work that they've done. So they've done all this investment in digitalization, gathering data more or less correctly, and then they're going to profit from that. And this project we have is a project where basically we want a very short project, 3 months, limited time and limited money, 37,000 euros, period, right? So it's short program, so it cannot be innovation because innovation would take more time than that. It has to be deploying off-the-shelf AI technology and making the SME profit fast. That's the whole story, right? And the thing is that if you do that, talk business with them, then progressively they come to understand what it's all about. The idea we have is that putting them in contact with an AI provider who's going to make this program, because we don't make the project, an AI provider does. So basically, I am a matching person. I understand what they want or what they would need. I put them in contact with a company who does the job, and in 3 months, they deliver the result. And at the end, what happens is that the SME is funded 50%. And at the beginning, they say that they do this because they get the funding, otherwise they would never go. And I think this is very true. At the beginning, they need that because this basically lowers the risk for them. At the end, they say, finally, it's not the money which was important. What was important is to get the contact with the right AI providers who has basically explained to us how to do it and has basically handled the risk for us. And usually these SMEs, they would go later to continue working with his AI providers. So this sort of program is easy to tell, relatively, not so easy to put in practice, has a lot of little knobs that you have to turn in the right way. The hardest part probably is to contact the SMEs, and I agree with, I think it's Martin who said that, Martin Lundborg. I think association of companies are very efficient for that, but lots of these SMEs are not really part of association which are very efficient. So the question really is to contact them and then to match them, understand their needs and match them. So I'm also working with JPay, the Global Partnership on AI, which is this international platform of G7. And basically there we have a project where we're going to try to build a tool that any member state could take and run for building a funding program. There would be use cases, because of course success stories are very important. Usually when I make a webinar to present the program, I invite companies, SMEs, and AI providers who explain what they did and how they did it. And we usually, when they explain that, they don't use AI words even. They explain business, what the business is, what is the return on investment, how does it go, how you do it, what do you need? And that's the first stage. After that, you have to go into what Martin Lundborg was presenting, which is all these different programs from training for building up on that. But first stage is not easy and cannot be a failure. That's it.
Thank you very much for this very, I think, this very practical picture you gave us about the hurdles for SMEs. I think it's, again, what you say, so Mr. Boni, also SMEs are the majority users of artificial intelligence. and how important networks are for this to grow. But it's also very important that we have not first a technical aspect in mind. So how they can integrate it for their business, how they can make fast and return of investment after they went this first step. This is very important for SMEs. And I think we have to learn there that we have to make it really, it is not only a question, now you have this tool, now it's also what I'm doing with my business with this tool then to make it happens for my customers and clients. We're coming next to Daniel Abu, General Manager of KI Bundesverband in Germany. Yeah, I think we heard a lot about networks and so on. What is your experience there? What we would say, and what is your approach to this debate?
Before I come to this point, I have to strongly disagree with Martin Ulbrich about Vulcans that don't have humor. I think Spock has a very distinguished humor, and also the comparison with AI is not there because every 7 years Vulcans have their ponfar. I don't think AI has that. So just for this case, and as also a Star Wars fan, I would also disagree that R2-D2 is AI. It's more like Eva said, for example, DeepL is a very good AI product. So this would compare to C3PO. But if we have now this heretic questions out of the way, I just want to start in saying what the situation we see in Germany is. We represent 300 AI companies. So to be a member at the KI Bundesverband, you have to have your focus on AI. And when we have a membership meeting about SMEs, what I sometimes call as more than group therapy than anything else, is the point that we have a communication problem. And Françoise said it very well, we have a dating problem there. But why do we have a dating problem? You have the characteristic, let me say, a classic SME. In the last 40 years, they thought in data silos, and the Chinese doesn't have to get my blueprints from my ideas. And so they thought the last 40 years in data silos. And now suddenly a 25-year-old AI company, a 25-year-old AI CEO comes to the 60-year-old SME CEO and says to him, now you have to do data sharing and you have to be on the cloud and think about edge computing. And these are two completely different point of views about digitalization. And this bridge, or this lack of a bridge which exists at the moment, we have to bridge it. Yeah, we have to bring these people together, but how do we do that? So the 25-year-old and the 60-year-old bringing together is quite difficult because as they perhaps speak the same language as German, English, French, or anything like that, they use completely different terminology. And this terminology is very different from each side of the factor you're looking in. We personally had the experience that if you have a CEO of an SME who has already good progress with AI products, he is more keen and he is more accepted by his peers about how to promote AI than theoretical 25-year-old AI CEO from Berlin-Kreuzberg. I think we have to see that it's a lot of communication problems that we have to circumvent on that. Second point that we also have to see is I saw the same study, 6 to 8% of German SMEs use AI products. I personally think this number is high. I think that we have to get together and really think about what the expectation game is. So the problem sometimes with AI products is that as there is a lack of data, so an SME comes to an AI firm, for example, and said, what kind of products do you have? Yeah, and they say, well, we have a range of products, but we have first to see your data, and we have to see first your processes, and then perhaps we can evaluate what kind of products we can deliver to you. This is not normally how it worked in older times. When you buy Word, you get a word processing software. If you want Final Cut, you get a video editing software. So also in the sense of perception, it is really difficult sometimes getting SMEs on the thought train that developing AI product for a firm is a process. Yeah, and that we also have to see there. But we are very optimistic and hopeful that we can do better the next years. But we can't wait too long. I think when I see, for example, in Germany, of course, AI products in Germany are mostly business-to-business cases, no business-to-consumer, because I would say this ship is sadly sailed out of the harbor quite a long time ago. But business-to-business is the chance that we have, and we have to work together. But we also have worked together on a European scale. Yeah, why can't AI products from Bulgaria can't be implemented in Germany? Why can AI products from Germany can't be implemented in Iceland? Yeah? We have to think outside our national borders. So what we were thinking, and we are currently developing, is a kind of search engine for SMEs, where they don't have to put in what they think they need, but what they put in, what they do at the moment. And then we can compare with semantic searches, perhaps AI products or AI firms that can help them, that can support them. This is now in pre-alpha version, and I think it is a better way than some landscapes which tell you nothing about that in big cities there are more AI firms than in rural areas. What kind of great knowledge is that? But I think that we need to have some kind of SME search engine throughout Europe where we can do that. And we're starting the product, what AI can do for you. And as soon, my friends, as it's outside of alpha, we will show that to you. Let me just at the end just say just some words about the EU regulation. When we saw the draft of the EU regulation, and I know that's not as quite rare that an association says yes, thank you, dear Commission, for this kind of regulation. But I think mostly we were quite happy with the high risk point. But the question that Eva Medel put is the definition of AI future-proof. I would say 60 to 70% of our members, where we asked them, they said no, it isn't. And it is not because they were saying what AI was 10 years ago and 5 years ago, and is perhaps in 5 or 10 years is a completely different kind of software implementation and stuff like that. So perhaps we can think about the definition of AI perhaps a little bit further, but we will do our input. SKI Bundesverband, but not only SKI Bundesverband, as we are paired with 8 other national AI associations from France, from Croatia, from Bulgaria, Austria, Slovenia, and the Netherlands. We are really looking forward working with the EU Commission and with the Parliament about the development of this regulation. And for that, live long and prosper in this case. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for this lively presentation. I think this is very interesting that you which perspective you bring in. This is again what we heard already: trust, but also trust and security from SMEs. And I think this is also a question of generations sometimes, because we have data that countries who have a very aged SME leaders has more problem to adapt than young SMEs. There we have to focus more. Also that you say we have a communication gap, that there is something we have to find together. I think the searching machine is a very good idea, and there we can also cooperate with our networks to support you. And this is always good if you have a concrete outcome of such meetings, webinars. And then also the time pressure. And time pressure is the world is not waiting for Europe. And this is leading us to our last statement here. Then we're coming to the open debate. Jürgen Warmbaum, member of the European Parliament. Yes, you are a member also of the Committee of Inter and also of AIDA and Vice President of SME Europe. Yeah, SMEs in the world. We are not only in Europe, we are not isolated. You stated, you said once, we need a new approach to support the new technology, to support artificial intelligence, and we have to do more for this. what we can do and what we should do now. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Horst, and thank you to the whole team for inviting me and organizing this event. And I'd also like to thank Eva for her leadership within, as coordinator within the Special Committee on Artificial Intelligence. She is really invested in digital issues, and it is always a pleasure to work together with her on these issues. My headline, my focus in my political job is competitiveness. No matter if I work on the Committee on International Trade, or the Budget Committee, or the Transport and Tourism Committee, or in the AI Committee, I work on competitiveness. And if you are interested in competitiveness, you have to be interested in AI, I think. I think we have had a great number of speakers with a lot of interesting facts, and I've also understood that I could. We've had the discussion between RTD2 and Spock, and also AI and dating. That was a new one for me. Very interesting to listen to that. I have three things that I'd like to mention today. First of all, the big potential we have for SMEs when it comes to AI. Second of all, the obstacles that we have and some of the things that we can do to remove those obstacles. And the third thing I'd like to mention is to say something about the new regulation and my feelings about them. But first, of course, there is a huge potential. And of course, it is sad to listen that in Germany, I think it was 6 to 8%, if I understood correct, that use AI today. But if you're an optimist, if you think positively, you can always say that it is a huge potential. We can scale this up so that a lot of SMEs use AI. And of course, not all of them will be AI developers, because most of them will use it for understanding their consumers, for increasing the efficiency of their advertising, or reducing the administrative work and the repetitive tasks, and instead that the humans can focus on other issues. So the potential is, of course, great. And I think that sometimes it is the people that are afraid of AI, they say that the computers will take over. But I think that we have to think it in terms of that man and machine will work together. And I think we should have regulations that focus on the cooperation between man and machine. We are lacking behind some of the other large economies around the world when it comes to competitiveness in general. I mean, growth in China, in US, in India, in lots of parts of the world is much better than it is in Europe, unfortunately. And this also is true when it comes to AI. Only 4 out of the 100 largest AI startups are European. And of course, we have to do something to change this situation around. And we can do that with regulation, maybe. But I think it is not only an AI issue. It is about the business climate as such that we have to improve in Europe. When it comes to obstacles that hinders SMEs, I think we have heard quite a lot about that today. Of course, we lack SMEs lack knowledge and skills and awareness in this field, and I don't think that is strange. But I'm very happy to listen to both François Soulier and Martin Lundberg about their examples, because it really shows what we can do to overcome this lack of knowledge. And I think that both AI developers or the system owners, the companies that provide the solution, they have to be better to understand the SMEs, as the SMEs has to be better to understand all the solution that exists. And those areas that you both present in Paris, in France, and when it comes to Mittelstandigital, I think that are excellent solutions. And I'm really happy that the Commission also has introduced those 200 digital innovation hubs, because I think they could be a springboard to roll out this throughout Europe, so that these great ideas about dating, if you want, about mixing, matching the AI companies with the SMEs, that will be an excellent way ahead, I think. I also would like to echo what Dr. Boney mentioned when it comes to sandboxes. I would like to see a lot more when it comes to sandboxes, so that we can have, in a safe environment, as much innovation as possible. Because as we increase the regulation across Europe, and in some cases I can agree that that is good, but in some cases I'm a bit afraid of that. But still, sandboxes will be a place where innovation can occur nevertheless, with safety for the consumers. So it will increase the innovation at a reduced costs, of course, and with safety for the consumers. My last issue, something about the regulation. I think the structure of the regulation is good. I think the high risk, the focus on different risk categories, is very good. I'm still afraid that it will be too many applications or companies that fall into the high risk categories. Also because of the issue of the definition of AI that has been brought up at least by two panelists. So that is one issue. One thing that I'm even more afraid of, or that I'd like to make sure that does not happen, is the bureaucracy of it. Because if you fall into the high risk category, there is, if I remember correctly, 7 or 8 different steps that you have to take in order to make sure that your AI system is safe. I can see that this, in a way, self-assessment is a way of trying to solve an issue of safety, but I'm not sure that it will. I'm sure it will increase the bureaucracy of a lot of companies, but will it really increase the trust of the consumers? I'm not totally sure, but I will certainly involve myself with a lot of discussions with SMEs and AI developers to understand their situation, because I think we all have to have a lot of discussions with stakeholders across Europe. There will be, of course, plenty of politicians that would like to regulate as hard as possible. I think the other way around is the better. I think we have to make sure that we have the best possible situation for innovation, and it is better to regulate a bit late than a bit early. That is my take on this. But I'm happy that the Commission also present a package when it comes to also promoting innovation in different ways, and I look forward to see how that falls out. So thank you very much once again, Horst, and I'm looking forward to the debate that follows.
Thank you very much, Jürgen. I think this is a very, what you mentioned here, that only 4 startups in Europe from 100 worldwide are in the top 100 for artificial intelligence. I think this is really a warning signal for us that we are lacking behind this development. But I think smart regulation, like you say, and perhaps sometimes waiting where the way is going is perhaps sometimes more clever than to regulate it before we know exactly where the developments are going. I think this is the right approach. I want to go directly to the debate. I encourage you also to ask questions to each other. The first thing what I was hearing was also from Daniel Abu that the development is to B2B, the future of artificial intelligence. If we're going to see, if we link it to Mr. Warbon, that we are becoming competitives in the world. B2C is lost already, or how we have to understand this?
Well, convince me of the opposite, and I will buy into it if I see the facts, but I can just say that in questioning our member companies, they are in 85–90%, they make B2B products. And I think that as we are representing over 300 AI companies in Germany, I think we get quite a good picture of the situation. And it's definitely like that. The B2C is not in that kind, and the American and the Chinese play there on a whole nother level. It doesn't mean that it has to stay like this forever, but if you want to make an AI company and perhaps earn a little money with it, B2B is more the place than B2C.
Thank you. And another questions, where we have in which time framework SMEs should adapt to artificial intelligence? Is there an idea where we are in 10 years? How much time we have left for this development? Is there something, Martin Lundborg, is there an idea where a target is? We had from Commissioner Schmidt, we heard 90% of SMEs should have until 2030 basic knowledge about digitalization, 75% should use cloud systems and use the data. 9 years sounds ambitious, in the same time it's for this technology very long, or not?
I heard a quote once. It says, how do you say, what is happening in 1 year, we think much more will happen, but we underestimate what's actually happening in 10 years. And if you go back, I mean, the iPhone came 2007, it's 14 years. The iPad came 2000. And I think what we're doing today with Zoom, it came, for me, I started to experience this in business usage 2014. And now we work completely different. I think we shouldn't underestimate what's happening in 10 years. So yeah, AI is a new way of making software. It's not a technology to be compared with blockchain or other technologies, because this is a new software revolution, and this will changes everything. I don't think AI. We were speaking about robots, etc. today. I'm not sure if AI really will replace human beings, but it will assist us in all possible ways. And I really think what Mr. Abu said to B2B is something I wanted to comment, because I also saw statistics that in Germany on overall startups, when it comes to the cooperation of startups with SMEs, B2B is much more relevant for the startups than consumer products for German startups. And so I really agree with Mr. Abu that this is definitely the way to go. And I think for Germany, perhaps we could have an exchange on this afterwards, so we would really like to support you to bring your members to the SMEs. I think also with regard to B2Bs, here GDPR is a relevant factor as well in Europe, because GDPR has led to a situation where SMEs have problems using personalized data. But for large platforms like Google or Facebook, they get their consents from the users, and they use the data more or less as they like, whereas the SMEs are hindered using personal data to the same extent. And that's something I think, I don't have a solution for this, but I think that's also one thing we should think about when we do regulation, that that this creates a level playing field, especially when it comes to data between SMEs and large corporations.
Thank you very much. Eva, I read from you that there are 3 things that will make AI made in EU successful. One is data has to be usable. If we are hearing now that it's easier to use for Google the data than for SMEs, sounds like we are going the wrong path, that we are regulating in a good way, but large company can handle it better than small companies. Is there a solution? Please, the floor is yours.
Well, I think with the provisions foreseen ahead of us and the suggestions coming from the Commission and the files that we are currently and will be working on data will probably make it easier
for SMEs to use that data. So that would be the aim. There is, you know, for basically entrepreneurs and owners of companies and SMEs across Europe, they have to know that we're working on other type of legislation to make this pool of the data easily accessible to them. You know, 20 or 30 years ago, many companies did not have an IT officer in their office. They didn't need one. Perhaps a person that we need nowadays is a data officer, a data steward, you know, someone to make sense of the data that's collected. Because I think it's unimaginable, you know, what we could do with the data that's B2B data, the data that's generated by companies, and how much we could use and reuse. And we've seen it, I mean, on one hand, on the statistics that Jorgen mentioned, on the statistics I've mentioned, you know, you could only excel so if you make sense of that data and if you use it. And we also need to make sure there is a lot of data, but sometimes we are keeping a lot of data also as consumers, for example, or citizens to ourselves. And I don't mean a very, very personal data, but certain data that we could give out and we could decide to give in order to serve for, you know, the public good, so to say. The same goes for institutions. There's a lot of data that institutions, governmental entities hold and possess. And if this data is unlocked, it really, there's so many examples. Basically, all the examples that currently are available, they're excellent examples. They unlock the potential of data. Companies can use that data. And you see miraculous things in the sector of environment or transportation or health. So you know, there's a lot of education to go on data, because I think right now what as citizens and as a private person we are worried is about, like, oh, I'm giving up data and I'm getting this ads, or somebody's using it to, you know, to commercialize my data. So we need to make sure that that data is secured and only certain data is used, because otherwise you wouldn't trust that if there's other data used would be used in the right way. So there's all these various discussions on data, and we need to be very careful because I mean, many people said data is oil, but oil can't be reused necessarily. And so I think data is this sort of commodity that one has to understand it better. You know, nobody speaks about data even in the educational sphere. You know, students might be taught some sort of financial education, whatever, but there's so much behind that, and it's a way broader process and topic than what we are discussing today or in another discussion. So I think some of those provisions that we're going to be working on in the two data packet, the two data dossiers that we're going to be working on, has to also focus on this bigger issue of trying to understand what we could do with data. It's not just for personalized ads, right? And so we need to move further ahead from that discussion, not just in an expert panel setting, but beyond.
Thank you very much. I think this is a clear message. Jorgen, I read from you that you also underline the importance of artificial intelligence from the pharma industry and health sector. Artificial intelligence can save lives. Can it be that our data protection is leading us there, that we are using then tools and also products then from the United States because we cannot develop it anymore in Europe? Because you mentioned also startups. I think it's not the financial reasons why they are leaving Europe. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I reacted first on the issue on business to business and business to consumer. I'd like to maybe not challenge Mr. Abu's or Mr. Lundberg's argument, but still I'd like to react on that, because I've heard this many times that, I mean, we in Europe, we have to give up on business to consumers. The race is lost, US has won, let's focus on business to business. I think that is fine when companies say that, because then it is a business decision. But when I hear that kind of argument from politicians, I think it is in the wrong direction, because I think that we as politicians should have rules and regulations that make sure that businesses can do great, nevertheless, if they do business to consumers and business to business. And given the fact that we have that things can change quite rapidly in the tech industry, within AI solutions, I think that there still is great potential for European companies when it comes to business to consumers. But there is one obstacle that have been mentioned, of course, and that is GDPR. Because as was mentioned, GDPR makes sure that US companies have an edge on business to consumers in comparison with European businesses, and we cannot allow that to happen. So we have to probably change a few parts of GDPR to make it more business friendly, but we also have to do negotiations with the US so that we have a more common system, because here we see everything out of integrity, and they in US see everything out of it is raw material for businesses. And China, of course, see it as the state owns the data. And I don't like the Chinese way, but I think we should more sync the European and US way. And that way we can make sure that we do a great business to consumer business ideas here in Europe as well.
Thank you very much. I think this is yeah, I think we saw this change, by the way, in the e-commerce sector, where B2B was before always the SME things for the goods. Now there's a shift in Benelux to B2C. Perhaps it's happening also in artificial intelligence, that we can see there's more movement. But I would also come back to Mr. Ulbrich from the Commission. What you would say, we have after this what you heard about data protection and so on. First, how you want to get in contact with SMEs, and second, how you make the bridge between trust and to use all the opportunities data can give us. Please, the floor is yours.
Well, we have, we are ourselves, of course, cannot get into contact with all the SMEs. We're talking to the associations, obviously. But we do have the European Digital Innovation Hubs system, which was already previously mentioned. So, and we will also have hopefully the regulatory sandboxes, which of course are run by member states. I mean, they're not actually run by the European Union. But that should help us also get some feedback, because now we've got the member states. We will have a committee at the European level, so to get some feedback on that. GDPR, of course, is a very hotly contested topic, and I'm not going to go into that right now. There's plenty of data out there which is not falling under GDPR. Certainly in terms of industrial data, there's plenty of things one can do without having to work with data which would be concerned by the GDPR. And there are also various other initiatives in terms of data strategy that we are currently undertaking to make, data ownership and various other things to make sure that data is available. Data is access to data is a problem not only in Europe, everywhere around the world. Access to data is a problem. I mean, even if you don't have GDPR, you still have to find the data, you still have to buy for it. There's still conditions attached to it, and then if you rely on the data, then your entire business model relies on your supplier. So there's, I would not. I mean, I can see that access to data is a problem, but I would not fault all of this on GDPR.
Thank you very much. And now we're coming also to the end. I want only to give also Mr. Boni and Ms. Solé the last questions then also. Michael, what is the trend in Europe then, artificial intelligence? Do we will have, from your point of view, such center regions who are the center for artificial intelligence, and some countries falling behind, some regions are leading. What is the development? What is the trend? Will be this, will their leading countries then, and how to bring it that, I think it's very important that we have the same chances in Europe everywhere to be a part of this future. Is this not something completely difficult? You mentioned, we've heard also infrastructure is important. People who are educated are important. SMEs and big companies are going there where they're finding infrastructure and well-educated people. How we can make it that we have in Europe this approach that nobody is falling behind, and that we, or it is better to have some leading regions. What do you think is the strategy here, please? Floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The only way to build the future competitive advantages for Europe, for European Union, is to build our advantages at the area of artificial intelligence development. It is crucial. Secondly, what is important, to harmonize all solutions, and on the other hand, for all member states, and on the other hand, to cooperate and to create some partnerships, because it is important to make some kind of equal solutions in all areas. And thirdly, what is important to understand that we are not only talking about the level B2B when we are discussing about artificial intelligence development, but on the other hand, it is B2C when businesses, especially small businesses, are using artificial intelligence solutions to make them SMEs much more profitable and with improvement in many areas. So we need to show what kind of advantages artificial intelligence can bring to all businesses. And fourthly, what is important, we need to improve the infrastructure, if I can say, for artificial intelligence development. It's related to legislation, of course, but it's related also to the ultra-fast internet and 5G development, and especially it is related to building those data spaces in many areas, as it was raised and described by the Commission last year. So we need to use real data strategy, and on the other hand, discussing about GDPR and discussing about using the data, we need to focus now on the new models for sharing data, because it is crucial how to share the data between public institutions. Open data solutions are important, businesses, and different kind of data which are growing up. So I think that harmonization, better infrastructure, and education and awareness are crucial for all of us, and to have equal situation all over Europe, and on the other hand, to build our advantages globally.
Thank you very much. I think this is already nearly a closing, but we're coming to the most important question to Ms. Solier. You are now the victim, and in this point, what would you wish from the government, from the lawmakers, from decision makers first? What would be your biggest, greatest wish to boost artificial intelligence for SMEs? This is the most important question today. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the gift, right? Yeah, thank you very much. I think it takes a lot of different things, actually. Obviously, the first thing is education. And when we talk about education, we all think that we need to train data scientists. No, we need to train the kids in school. We need to train everybody in school to know what it means to give your data freely, what it means to use your data, and to understand the basics of this new economy. If we do not do basic education at high school level, then the battle is really hard after that. So education is the first stage. Afterwards, of course, education in university and all these things, we know about that. as we speak about education, another aspect is important is education of the people who are working in these companies, because my SMEs, when they're finished their project, they tell me, how do I do now? I need to hire data scientists. And no, it doesn't work this way. First, they have to train their own people at a certain level, and then they can hire a data scientist. If they hire a data scientist up front, the guy will stay there 2 months and will go because he will get bored. So the education problem is enormous. It has lots of ramification in many different levels. And this has to be solved absolutely. So when Martin Lundborg was talking about these AI trainers, this is one part of the story, but it takes a lot of work. The second part probably is funding at one point or another. It doesn't have to be only funding, but funding is certainly an issue. The SMEs have a very tight, money-wise, they're very tight. They don't have much time. So you need to ease this problem for them. You need to put on the table a funding program which is easy, accessible, doesn't have to be very large amounts of money. But if you tell them that to get this funding, they need to write a proposal of 60 pages, no. Our proposal for getting our funding is 5 pages with cross, and that's it. So you have to understand that SMEs do not have the time to fill out lots of paperwork to get funding, but they will need probably the funding to start. After that, in programs like Martin was describing, you need lots of activities which are very varied. You need to show them success stories. You need to show them training session. You need to show them webinars where they can share with other members, because for them, sharing with their friends or competitors sometimes is very important. So it takes a lot of different things, and all these things have to be played right, I'm afraid. So not easy, not something you can, we cannot reuse the model of the H2020, always in Europe kind of model, where big consortiums, big proposal and all this thing. This doesn't work for SMEs at all, or will not work for SMEs. So lots of different programs, always keeping in mind, you're talking about companies which are small, do not have the time, do not have the resources, but they can decide immediately, because you talk to the boss and the boss does it. So fast return, that's what is important for them.
Thank you. Excellent, I think, closing. I want to say thank you to all the speakers. I think we are only the beginning of the debate. I would encourage also you to build up with us a network. I think the exchange is helpful. We have also a large network to other associations who would like, I think, or love to work together with you. We have on the 21st of June 2021, this year, the next artificially intelligence webinar about economic competition, society and ethics. So you are also invited to join us on this day.